Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Teal Club webinar or town hall webinar. Sorry, we're running a few minutes late, but we're getting started now. So we're going to start by having the project planner give a brief overview of the project and kind of the steps that have been taken to get us to this point, and then the next steps coming up. And then we're going to have the applicant give a presentation on the project and kind of highlight some of the components of what's going to be coming before the city council. And then we will be opening up for questions and going through some of the questions that we've received before the meeting, and then answering some of the questions that we have from the public that are joining us here today. So with that, I will hand it over to Jay Dabrowski, our supervising planner, to give us a brief overview of the project.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I do want to provide a brief background on the project. Back in 2015, so about 10 years ago, the city published an environmental impact report for public review. The city received numerous comments, and at that time, the project was revised. And so based on all the comments and the project revision, the city prepared a revised environmental impact report. In 2022, that EIR was published for public review. The city did receive many comments on that as well. Those comments were addressed in the response to comments section and later presented to the Planning Commission. I should mention that in April of 2022, this project was presented at a community workshop meeting. This project did go to the Planning Commission back in November of last year, and the Planning Commission reviewed all of the comments submitted as well as the testimony received that evening. And the Planning Commission made a recommendation to City Council. That recommendation is to approve the project as proposed with a few changes. And so with that brief background, I do want to give the floor to Dennis Hargrave, the project applicant, and he has a brief presentation for us this evening.
Thank you, Jay. And staff has a PowerPoint presentation. It is the one we saw at the Planning Commission, and we will wait for them to bring that up, and we'll walk through that presentation with everybody. The Teal Club specific plan, as Jay has mentioned, the Teal Club specific plan is a long-standing part of the City of Oxnard general plan, and it is. I'm looking to a monitor to my side, if you don't mind. Our firm, Development Planning Services, designed the Teal Club specific plan project. Our practice has involved master plan communities. Most familiar to you in Oxnard would be the Northeast Plan area, which is the area from Pacifica High School over to St. John's Hospital. And so that was a master plan we did well over 20 years ago in the city. And other ones locally have been Village at the Park and a component of North Ranch Specific Plan in Thousand Oaks, and several other ones, Springville and Camarillo. So our practice is focused on doing master plan projects, primarily infill projects such as this that are within the curb and SOAR boundaries of communities in our area. We've worked closely with staff over the last decade on this project. We've had a number of community meetings, as many of you know, and when we appeared at the Planning Commission, we did agree with the staff report and their recommendations in the project. And we just will walk through the project with you now a little bit. I'm going to switch my view so I'm looking at the screen too. So with that, the first screen shows you its context, that the property is bounded on the east by Ventura Road, Doris Avenue on the north, and Teal Club Road on the south, and Patterson on the west. The entirety of the property is within the city of Oxnard's curb boundary, so it is not a SOAR project. It's adjacent to the Cabrillo neighborhood, which is north of us, and Fremont North and Fremont South. And then south of Teal Club Road is another component which is not part of the Teal Club specific plan, but there are some annexations that the city is doing to vacant properties primarily, or underutilized properties on the south side of Teal Club Road, which ultimately will become airport related industrial designations. I believe staff can clarify that. Next slide. The land use plan concept is an urban village. The city general plan calls for an urban village for Teal Club, and all infill or all major specific plans are to be urban villages. So the concept of it is to provide for a range of densities and a range of product types when you do a development. And in this particular case, we've focused in more or less in a concentric way with the higher densities near Ventura Road, along the Ventura Road corridor, and that would be adjacent to public transportation. The Gold Coast bus routes are already in that area, and we would be enhancing them with addition of a transit stop shelters on both sides of Ventura Road, and then some lower densities of townhomes, and then detached cluster or single family lots along planning areas 1 and 2, adjacent to the neighborhood, the Cabrillo neighborhood to the north. One of the core concepts of this community now, as opposed to the previous iteration of it that had a large multi-use sports park component or public amenity in the northwest corner, we've created a 10-acre neighborhood park in the central component of the property. That's planning areas 8 and 9, as you see in green in the middle. That is more focused on a neighborhood function for that park, but less active than a major sports fields complex. The northwest corner of the project, many of you may remember, was taken out of this project because the Oxnard Elementary District, the K-8 district, under threat of eminent domain, acquired the property and went ahead and did their own approval process for a school campus at that site. That campus has not moved forward at this point. As anyone knows, it's been out in the area, but it's still their property, and it's theirs to decide what they're going to do with it. The city of Oxnard and the property owners, the Borchards who developed this specific plan, did not support the school at the location because of the concerns about schools and aircraft safety zones. Also, Ventura County Transportation Commission and the Airport Commission, Airport Authority also did not support it. So the city did not include that in the Teal Club specific plan. That was one of the reasons we went back and spent several years redoing the environmental impact report and reworking the plan. The central pedestrian connection that you see runs east-west from Ventura Road along to where a roundabout hits, and then continues through the park, and then continues to the west all the way to Patterson Road. You're able to make direct pedestrian and bike path connections across the area. So let's go on to the next slide. This one is, I would just refer you to look in the specific plan on the city website for the specific densities. This is from page 26 of the specific plan. This plan, just so you understand contextually, it's far less dense than the wagon wheel plan. There are no buildings taller in any place on this site than 3 stories in all likelihood. The residential units will be 2-story and 3-story, and they'll be primarily single family detached, duplex, and some triplex units in the project. The only area where the densities will be higher will be in the southeast corner where the dark green component was shown, that is an apartment density. And you might toggle back just for that, just for a second if you can. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that PA5 is where the highest densities would occur, closest to public transportation as well. And even at that, those are all within the height limits and the building coverage requirements of the airport influence zones that have been identified for the project. Go ahead and move forward 2 slides. Just to give you a sense of context, this is rotated 90 degrees from north. Basically, what you're seeing is Ventura Road on the top of this picture. And this is a proposal for the new entrance conceptually coming off Beverly. So there would be a new traffic signal at Beverly, and there would be mixed use buildings that would be small retail spaces on the ground floor, possibly could be food, restaurant, a small amount of that, probably no more than about 10,000 square feet of that, with some apartments on top of that. And then some other details. You'll see the bus shelter on the upper right-hand corner of this picture. And then there would be another one on the opposite side of Ventura Road at the Beverly signal. So there would be a signal at Beverly and Ventura Road added to this project. We'll talk more about streets in just a little bit. But if you go to the next slide, we can show you the context a little bit more closely. Within that mixed-use plaza area, we created a roughly about a 15,000 square foot on the left central plaza, which could be a combination of hardscape surface, potentially artificial turf, so it's more durable, and then a small stage area and some covered pergola and seating areas. This would be an appropriate place that we find in neighborhoods makes a lot of sense to create some small outdoor stage spaces for neighborhood events. We've seen these have been activated by having neighborhood concerts, streets, fairs, farmers markets, any number of things can happen there. We have a couple of situations where we've done these, particularly in Santa Clarita, where they've been sort of adopted by some of the neighborhood performing arts groups, and they will use them in cooperation, with scheduling so that they can do outdoor events where it's appropriate. The other spaces shown on the right, the public spaces, would be more the dining plaza or seating plaza between the mixed-use buildings. So that concept is just to create some neighborhood walkable open spaces that people can enjoy, seating plazas, and it's also appropriate for and walkable for the existing neighbors to come to those sites. Next slide is just a quick example of go ahead and go to the next slide, sorry. That's an example of a very recent mixed-use building we just did in Springville, in Camarillo. So what you can see in that is the scale of it is that there are storefronts on the bottom and there are apartments on the upper floor. These typically are either 2-story or 3-story buildings, and they're almost always done as rental units. We prefer that. We find it's a good flexible way to operate those. And so that's a concept we would use. Next slide. The specific plan is very intentional in not trending to modern architecture. Our concepts here are we really want to be reflective of what's in the historic district architectural styles that are located between here and downtown. And so we are focused in the specific plan on craftsman, Spanish, Monterey, and traditional forms, and some modern interpretations of those, but these will not be what you would consider modern or highly contemporary architecture. We think it's great to create a neighborhood that has a longer standing feel for permanence, and we just find that these age well in place. The most clear example I could give you of that, feel free to drive over to Village at the Park in Camarillo, where we've used those styles. And we find that 20 years in, those homes still are extremely appropriate, and the landscape and the setting of the houses sets a real character for a neighborhood that retains and increases in value over time. Next slide. One of the key components of the neighborhood, as we said, is a internal community park. Phase 1 of the project, which we'll look at in a minute, the phases, adds 6.5 acres of parkland internally. It also would have private recreation amenity within the neighborhoods in the higher densities. They could have a private pool or private rec areas of their own. But in the future phases of the project, it would add another 10 plus acres of park. So there would be a 10-acre park in the center, and in phase 2 in the southwest corner, there would be another approximately 7 to 8 acres of parkland down there. What we do across the entire site is we use this linear greenbelt concept, and we've used it other places. This is an actual example near the Pleasant Valley Fields Park. A linear greenbelt, typically they're about 30 to 50 feet wide. They also run parallel to public streets so that there's always eyes on the street and they don't become a policing issue, but rather they become a path that encourages, with a class 1 bike path, encourages people to ride their bikes and move safely through the neighborhoods, back and forth from if the school is built to the retail and back to their own neighborhoods. Next slide. The EIR also includes a reduced intensity alternative. It's not in the specific plan book when you look at it online, but it is in the EIR. What that does is it eliminates the industrial uses that showed on the other plan along the north side of Teal Club Road. So planning areas 11 and 12 would eliminate some small industrial uses that were planned for that site, but instead make it all residential. We don't add any additional units in that plan. We keep the same number of total units in the project, which is 990. But what it does is it reduces the density or the intensity of those units that are built in planning areas 11 and 12. And it also reduces AM and PM peak hour traffic by about 11 to 12%. By eliminating the industrial uses. The industrial uses tend to concentrate their traffic in the morning and in the evening during those rush hours. So the property owners are fine with this particular version. And so if I can just point out to you the phasing line, you'll see, and I don't have a cursor control, but I think you can see it on there. There's a red dash line that runs, runs up there and then turns and goes up. Phase 1 is everything above the red dash line and to the right of it, and phase 2 is everything below the red dash line. So that, and again, those are the areas that are under consideration. Just while the specific plan is being approved, is being requested for approval for the whole property, and the EIR covers the entire property. The development agreement that's coming to the city council is only over the phase 1 component of the property, because the only development initially being proposed on the project is the phase 1 component, and most of the infrastructure goes in with the phase 1 development. So that's the alternative within the EIR. And again, property owners have no problem with this. If the city wants to keep the industrial in, they can elect to do that, but we would be fine if it went the other way. And we think it, as from a planner's point of view, I think the compatibility is better with this plan. And I think it also leaves all of the industrial uses on the south side of Teal Club Road, which, as you can see, is already partially industrial now. And then there's some existing residential uses in under where the title is. There's some homes that are there that are up next to the airport. And I know that ultimately there's some concern about those homes' proximity to the airport. Next slide. This is the other EIR alternative, which is phase 1 only. And phase 1 only shows you just the ownership of the Borchard family, who has had us prepare the EIR. And so in that, it looks at what if we only develop phase 1. If you develop only phase 1, you have to have agricultural buffers around the edges. So you can see in PA3 that there's an area that has a hatch mark, which would be a interim agriculture buffer until phase 2 developed. And then if you long-term, you would not get the additional housing or industrial or the park if they did phase 1 only. It does create some interface problems in that it doesn't create the road network completely through the project that might be beneficial, and it also doesn't meet the standards of what the housing element has in it in the general plans showing the full build out of Teal Club. Next slide. The next one represents a vehicle circulation plan, and in the specific plan, you'll find not only bike plans, pedestrian plans, but also the vehicle plan. I'm focusing just on this at this point. In the development of the project, the question has come up, when will the infrastructure be in? And we would have Doris Avenue, Ventura Road, and Teal Club frontage in phase one, all built prior to the first occupancy of phase one. And so that would be pretty typical for City of Oxnard standards. So the roadway widening to Ventura Road would occur, Doris would be widened, signal would be installed at Beverly, and Teal Club Road would have widening as well. So that additionally, Coronado and Beverly Drive would need to connect in on the interior to provide the circulation needed. There are additionally, not shown on this exhibit, we have now added at the request of the Planning Commission, Class 1 bike paths on inside the edge of the project on Doris and Ventura Road and Teal Club Road, and there already was one planned for Patterson. So this would have Class 1 bike paths, which means multi-use trails that are not on the street, which gets cars and bikes separated. So with that, next slide. This, I'll go through these real quickly. This just gives you an idea. This is looking northbound on Ventura Road. So on the right is a typical section of the existing frontage road that runs parallel to Ventura Road. And Ventura Road would be widened from its existing 4 lanes to 6 lanes. Everything north of Doris Avenue widens to 6 lanes. This would widen it to 6 lanes plus add a median. And now, not shown on this, on the left side of the picture would be a Class 1 bike lane on Ventura Road inside the project. So there'd be a bus shelter on each side of the street at that traffic light. Next slide. This one is looking at Doris Avenue, and that is looking east. If you look on the left side, that is the existing Cabrillo landscape and sidewalk section. The plan would be to put a widened, enhanced, larger median in the middle of that road, and then have a larger traffic lane and a bike lane on the shoulder. We can potentially do 2 lanes in each direction all the way across. It would widen to have multiple turn lanes at Ventura Road. And then on the new side of the project, we would also have the new Class 1 bike path along that side. And for the City Council hearing, we will update these exhibits so they can see that. Next slide. This is the Teal Club Road phase 1 build out that you can see. And in phase 1 and phase 2, as the project is built, there is not a median in the road, but the reason there's a continuous turn lane in Teal Club Road is because there's a large number of existing residences on the south side. So this particular view is looking to the east, and so the road, all of the widening would come out of the Teal Club or the Borchard Teal Club specific plan property, and nobody's front yards would be impacted on the south side in those existing properties. They would all have the road widened on the north side of the road. But there has to be a turn lane because there's so many driveways going into all those different businesses and properties along there. Next slide. This is the Patterson Road view, and it's this one is looking north, and you're basically on the right is where the school or the park would be in phase 2. And then there would be a large parkway there with a Class 1 trail, which is already shown there. And then the roadway width on Patterson will be the same as Patterson is north of Doris. So as you go up towards Gonzales, it would be that same exact section as you have now on that street. That is pretty much the land use concept. And if we take a look, I'd just like to give you a summary of what the land use facts, I would say, and zoning information is on the next slide. And first of all, the project is located within the city's curb boundary. It's not within Oxnard or SOAR boundaries. So it is not a SOAR project, not a SOAR vote project. It is located in the city of Oxnard sphere of influence. It does comply with the Oxnard Airport Master Plan. That compliance was confirmed by VCTC and the Airport Land Use Commission. and it is consistent with the City of Oxnard general plan for all of these land use designations. We've been asked by several people, why don't you do higher density like some of the other projects? We don't think it's appropriate at this location as an infill project. And other people say, why don't you do all single family homes? And doing all single family wouldn't meet the housing objectives that the City of Oxnard has set, or that they've told the state of California in your housing element that you would be doing. In being consistent with the airport master plan, it means that the building coverage for the site will not exceed 25%. Our firm designed the Springville specific plan, and that project also has those same standards and complies with those standards. So included when anyone buys a home is a notification that there is an navigation easement, that there are airport activities near them. So that's a common and required practice by the Ventura County Transportation Commission. And it is included, as I've said, within the state approved housing element. It's also consistent with your prior housing element. This has basically been in the works with the state, and the Oxnard's been recognizing this project will be built eventually as part of the housing element plans. The project does require city council approval still. That's the next step, tentatively scheduled for April 15th. And it requires a LAFCO annexation to the city of Oxnard, and also a couple of water district and agencies like that. The schedule would be that the track map and development plans would follow. You're not seeing any house plans as part of this design. This is a EIR, a specific plan, a general plan amendment, and a development agreement at this stage. There would be future hearings, and staff can talk about that would involve the track map and the development plans for each of the planning areas that you saw there. Estimated construction time is 2026 through 2029. So it would probably be a 4 to 5 year construction schedule, depending how the markets go, and a lot of things beyond everybody's control. Next slide. The last thing I wanted to point out is the project public benefits. We always look at this and see what can we bring back to a community that brings benefit, and this is an important component of it. The first thing is this is unique to any project we've ever seen at this scale in Ventura County. We're providing a local buyer preference program within the development agreement that provides for home sales to create housing ownership opportunities for Oxnard residents. Being that these homes are I would say in the middle range of new home prices for Ventura County, because they will be smaller lots and smaller homes and duplexes and townhomes. These are a good first and second time buyer opportunity. And quite often what we see happen is that at these price points, investors buy these homes up. What we'd rather see happen, and what we're trying to memorialize in the development agreement and in a robust program, is that local buyers would have an early preference for phases of homes being released to qualify to buy them. And those are for market rate homes. It does provide a range of product types for many home buyer demographics and household types. Everything from probably 1,000 square foot small triplex unit to maybe as much as 2,800 square feet in the largest of the detached units. 15% of the total project units will be permanent affordable housing rentals at low and very low income levels. That will be in rental product, and it will all be located within the project. There won't be any offsite meeting of those requirements. It will be folded in and designed into the neighborhood. We've used that in every specific plan. If you go to Springville, there's several places that there are affordable units that look no different than the market rate ones. Village at the Park, we have the same thing. So we're used to making those distinctions and making those work within a community because a community is better when everybody can live there. Additionally, we went to the city council a couple of years ago and had a discussion about this, and we've worked out in the development agreement a payment of $2.2 million to the city of Oxnard for their sole discretion to use for city construction of farm worker housing or to help with some of the gap financing that's needed for a farm worker housing project. So we're agreeable with that within the development agreement. Additionally, we have a local hire preference program. This local hire preference program is geared to Ventura County-based contractors, and it's for the employees of those contractors, obviously, because we would much rather see local contractors and local employees benefit from these projects. And you have a large pool of particularly engineering contractors who do streets, sewers, storm drains, those kinds of projects that can do this. And there's also many other subcontractors available who can do the other work as well. One of the reasons to do that is, additionally, besides just keeping the money local, is that it reduces air quality impacts because people stay in the area, and it also does create good paying local construction jobs, and that's a goal. It also establishes a Gold Coast transit shelters on Ventura Road at Doris, which leads to reduced need for cars to get to certain employment centers like the bases and government center and other places where Gold Coast goes. And it creates the public plaza for cultural activities we mentioned. And it is a walkable, bike-safe community with the Central Park that's open to everybody in the community to use. So the improvements to the perimeter streets would be major, but also within the neighborhood, I think you'd find yourself wanting to walk in this neighborhood because it would be a safe, pleasant place to walk. And finally, it dedicates all of its groundwater rights to the city of Oxnard. I know there's been several questions, both at Planning Commission letters and also in the webinar question section about water use and water rights. This project has Fox Canyon groundwater rights, which now can be transferred to the city of Oxnard, and they can be extracted either from a well on this side of town or at a well somewhere else, but they would have the rights to the water. We've done this in Camarillo on 3 separate occasions, and these projects have all turned out to be net neutral on water use because it actually uses less water than the farming activities do historically that have been here. And with that, just last slide, we can just show again, we're ambivalent about which approach the city wants to take, but we think the reduced intensity alternative meets the objectives, creates a community that would make sense in this area and would also reduce traffic a little bit. And with that, I'm here to answer questions. Maybe you can go one more slide. I believe you'll have yes, there's the specific plan one. You can see the small band of purple, which is really just for small tilt-up concrete buildings. With that, I'm here to answer questions along with staff. Thanks so much for giving me this much time.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. So with that, we see that a few of you guys are dropping comments into the question and answer box. So if you can continue to do that, and we'll take notes of those questions and provide responses to those. As I mentioned in the beginning, we did receive a few questions before the meeting. So we'll start by going through those questions, just in case there's a couple of questions that it may answer for those joining us here on the call. And then we'll go through the questions that we've been receiving in the question and answer box. And then if there's anybody who would like to comment, we can also take questions there. So with that, I'll hand it over to the project planner to walk through some of the questions that we received before the meeting. And Dennis, the applicant, can also chime in as he sees. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We see that they are being submitted in the chat box, and we're doing our best to write them down. And we will get to those. First, we want to go to those that were previously submitted. So we had a few come in via email, and so I want to get to those first. We'll just go in the order they were received. The first question, we got, I think, 3 questions actually regarding the project's proximity to the airport, that's Oxnard Airport, as well as air quality and lead in the air. And I want to address that question with the EIR that is available on the city's website as well as in the library that does address the project's potential impacts on the environment. That does not address the existing environment's impacts on the project. So it's the project's impact to the environment. The project does not include a substantial contribution of lead that would cause an exceedance of a state or federal standard. The EIR hazards section, it does state that there could be lead in the soil. That's the topsoil of the project that was used for farming. There is a mitigation measure in the hazards section for that very item, and it includes soils remediation such as removing the upper 1 to 1.5 feet of soil, monitoring that, and if necessary, implementing a plan to ensure the health of future workers, residents, and visitors. I do want to also point out that development near the Oxnard Airport sphere of influence is conditioned to require notice to all property owners that inhabitants may be affected by the airport and aircraft operations. And then, as you heard earlier, City Council is the decision maker on this project. They do have several decisions in front of them. One of them is to certify the EIR and also to approve the project. This project is scheduled for City Council review in April 15th. And so that agenda will be coming out in the following weeks. The next question we received was regarding parking spaces. And I did see this one pop up also in the chat box, so I want to address that. The proposed project would allow for future development of 990 residential units. And the question is, how many parking spaces would be included? How many for the single-family dwellings? And how many for the other units? And so I want to respond to that with the development is not proposed at this time, so staff does not have those exact plans. The development, when it is proposed, that will be subject to the zoning code requirements. The zoning code does require 2 garage spaces for single-family development. And the zoning code requirements, they're also available on the Planning Division website. The next question we received was regarding the Mello-Roos origination document and details regarding Mello-Roos assessment. It's not clear what exactly was requested by that question. Staff can refer the commenter to the development agreement that is located in the Planning Commission staff report, and it will be also attached to the City Council staff report. And at this time, I'll move on to the next set of questions we received. We had a question regarding the roadways adjacent to the project site. In particular, the roadway improvements to Teal Club Road between Patterson and Ventura Road, and Teal Club Road essentially from in between Ventura Road and Victoria Avenue. And so I want to offer a response here that some of the roadway improvements you just saw discussed by the project applicant, those roadway improvements are shown in the specific plan. They are discussed in the EIR. Essentially, the Teal Club Road, that roadway would be widened, and it would be widened with phase 1, so along the phase 1 boundary. It would also be widened to from the boundary of phase 1 all the way west to Victoria Avenue. However, that widening all the way to Victoria Avenue, that would occur with phase 2 development. The Phase 1 does include roadway widening, but the roadway will still be 2 lanes. However, it will be wider than the existing roadway. The next question we received was regarding water availability for the project. And essentially asking if there will be enough water for the proposed future development. And the city did respond to this. There was a discussion about it during the Planning Commission hearing. And so I want to respond here that with the city will, of course, provide water to the project site, essentially from city wells and the state water project. The city staff estimates that the project would require approximately 450 acre-feet of water per year. And when the property is annexed to the city, the applicant would transfer 500 acre-feet per year of water to the city. So this project would be in compliance with the city's water neutrality policy. Essentially, the water rights that are out there on the property right now would exceed what would be required for the future development. I want to move on to the next question here. That was regarding the housing units that are set aside for low-income residents and the affordability of housing in the project area. So to back up a little bit, the proposed, or I should say the future development would include up to 990 residential units. The specific plan includes 15% of those units as affordable units. Those units, well, the specific plan allows for various housing types and residential densities. That includes market rate and income restricted units. The for sale units range from multifamily units to small single-family homes on lots up to 3,500 square feet in size. And all of those types and densities would provide a wide range for multiple households, types, and incomes. And I think we're going to get into the specifics of that a little bit later. Moving on here, we received a question regarding infrastructure and private projects that would be required once the specific plan is built. And it looks like the question is, what measures are in place to assure that those improvements, the required improvements, would be constructed after the housing units are occupied? And staff can respond with the development agreement. Again, that's in the Planning Commission staff report, and it will be attached to the City Council staff report. That does spell out some terms as to when the public improvements need to be constructed. And I should note some of those are prior to some of the housing units. So the specifics are detailed in that agreement. Moving on, we did receive a question regarding landscape maintenance districts and how those would include the cost of half of a police officer and half of a firefighter. I do want to provide a response here to that one, that the proposed specific plan, it doesn't specifically include landscape maintenance districts. It does include a community facilities district. That CFD does include funding for police and fire resources. The specifics of that funding, the payments and the funding, that is spelled out in the development agreement. And moving on here, let's see, we have a question regarding development of a high-density housing project, a K through 8 school, and businesses, and how that would be an improvement to the city of Oxnard. And I'll respond to that question here with the proposed specific plan would allow for various types of development, which would essentially be a medium density development. The project does not include a school or school facilities. Note that at one time there was a school and school facilities proposed in the specific plan area. The project had been revised, and so any school or school facilities, if they are constructed, those would be on an adjacent lot. So not within the specific plan, but adjacent to the specific plan area. And then furthermore, housing, schools, and businesses, regardless of where they are developed in the city, those would provide property tax and sales tax revenue. Those items are not available from unincorporated farmland. And then moving on, we had more of a comment here. It looks like the commenter says they're opposed to the project. The city has too many vehicles, and a high-density project would cause more congestion, parking issues, crime, noise, trash, and pollution. And then the commenter goes on to say that adding another school would burden the taxpayers and create a traffic nightmare. And then goes on to say, school and housing next to an airport is an accident waiting to happen. And one reason the property owners haven't been given permission to expand due to possible plane accidents. So I'm let's see here. Okay, so regarding this, again, I don't see a specific question, again, more of a comment. The potential traffic impacts as well as hazards regarding the airport facilities, those are discussed in the EIR. There is an entire traffic section. There is a hazards section. So please take a look at that. That is available on the city's website. It's also available in the library as well as the service center. Regarding the airport, this project was reviewed by the Airport Land Use Commission, and they did find that as the project is proposed, it is consistent with that airport land use plan. Moving on to the next question here. This is a question that says, how will this project affect the sewer and the water supply in a drought-ridden city? Adding to the sewer and water system will only cause more problems and add cost for the city. And then it goes on to say that too many homes in Oxnard are adding accessory dwelling units in the rear yard. And that adds more street parking, and street parking becomes parking lots. So to respond to that question, the city will provide water and sewer service to the project. Those details are discussed in the EIR in the utilities section. As far as traffic goes and street parking goes, again, traffic is discussed in the EIR. As far as ADUs goes, the city is largely preempted by state law. That is, ADUs may be constructed without providing on-site parking, again, with specific terms here. And so the city does have parking requirements spelled out in the zoning code. And the city does have parking available on streets. Moving on to the next question here, and it looks like a rhetorical question here. It says, isn't low density housing the best for everyone? And so to respond to that, there are many residents in the city of Oxnard that live in apartments, condos, townhomes, and single-family residences. You heard from the applicant earlier regarding the state requirement, the housing element that needs to include various residential units, and it has to identify the specific number of units. And so in response to that, the proposed specific plan would allow for various housing types and residential densities, and that includes market rate and income restricted units. Note also that the proposed specific plan is located in a urban village that's designated by the general plan, and that does call for a greater number of affordable housing than development in other areas of the city, as well as various housing product types. And then I'll move on here to the next question. This is more of a comment here, and that is, well, it says here that everyone I know is against the project. Oxnard needs low-density housing with a front and rear yard, not built on top of each other. Ventura Road will turn into a freeway. It's hard to leave the city in the morning along every major route. Adding another 10,000 to 20,000 vehicles will only make the problem worse. It goes on to say a perfect example of this is the collection. It looks like they're referring to the collection. That whole area is congested all day with high density in the area. And it mentions specifically last week the line to get into Shake Shack was to Chick-fil-A, blocking the entrance to Panda Express. Had to exit by Starbucks. And in response to that, the specific plan does include various housing products. It does include single-family residences, and it does include a park as well as front yards and rear yards. And the potential traffic impacts of that future development are discussed in the EIR. As part of that mitigation for traffic, the roadways would be widened. And I think we saw that earlier up on the screen. Those roadway sections are shown in the specific plan. And then I'll move on here to our next question. And it looks like that says, with increased new homes, what kind of traffic patterns and control in the surrounding neighborhoods? And I apologize, I'm doing my best to understand these questions here. And it looks like that question is specifically looking for traffic impacts. So again, I'll refer that commenter to the EIR. Again, the specific plan also does show the roadways that would be widened and what those roadways would ultimately look like. Some of them would be widened to 4 lanes, as well as a bike lane on each side, and still accommodate for on-street parking. And then I should mention that one of the revisions the Planning Commission proposed was to include a Class 1 bike lane so that any bicyclists as well as pedestrians would be separated from vehicle traffic. I'll move on here to the next question. And that question, it just says noise control. What effort does the city have? And so to respond to that, the city's noise thresholds are detailed in the zoning code. And usually when development is located near a noise source, such as a railroad, the developer can include double pane or triple pane windows to mitigate any noise to the residents. And it looks like that's the end of the questions that were submitted prior to this meeting. So we did receive many questions since this meeting started. It looks like we'll go to those, I think in the order they were received, although where we did receive multiple inquiries, we'll try to group those together to provide a response. And again, you're always welcome to submit questions in the chat box. Thank you.
And Jay, I'm available to kind of walk through some of these questions as well. So.
Yes, that's right. I do want to point out, we do have the applicant still here in the meeting, and the applicant is certainly welcome. Dennis, if you'd like to provide any additional information. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and maybe if I won't be quite linear, but I've been scrolling down through the open questions, the 30 questions that are in there, and if I can kind of address a few of them, and some of them are repeaters, but obviously the first one is lost the slideshow. I hope that Mark got the slideshow back. And then the question came in, how long will the project take to build? We did state that we believe it's 2026 through 2029 in all likelihood to build phase one. We don't control phase two through either ourselves or our developer partner. So we're not aware of how long phase two could take to build. But the street build outs would all happen at the beginning of the project. And I will talk a little more about that. And again, there will be public submitted documents at a later date for the track map layouts. It will conform to this street system that you see and the street improvements. And those improvements, again, would be built at the beginning of the project before the first occupancy. Something that shows that, well, I'll address this one first. Did you study on the traffic congestion? I think, Jay, you addressed that it's in the environmental impact report. It shows the impacted intersections and what intersections offsite need to have improvements that are part of this project's responsibility, not just the on-site roads, but whatever needs to be addressed offsite. So at the public hearing, if that question comes up that someone wants that clarified, I'm sure the Public Works Department and the city's transportation engineers can answer that in a public hearing setting more adequately than we could in this planning workshop. But the EIR does address that. Next down was anticipate overflowing of parking congestion to the other neighborhood. That showed up multiple times. I know that there's concern is raised in that. In addition to having two-car garages, there would be two-car garages in all for sale units. So I just want to clarify that. Anything that's a for sale unit would have that. And the apartments would all meet the apartment parking standards that the city has as well. We don't like to see projects underparked. It doesn't do any good for the existing neighbors or the new neighborhood to have parking problems. I've lived in Village at the Park for 20 years and have been on the Homeowners Association board that whole time. And we've watched very closely where the issues occur, and we're familiar with how we can try to address those to the best way possible. So it will be something that can be reviewed in the project plans as they come up. So the anticipation of overflowing parking congestion in the planning areas 1 and 2 that are adjacent to the Cabrillo neighborhood. I can address that by saying there will also be a parking apron, a driveway apron as well on a home in that neighborhood. So it's not as though these are condos without any surface parking. And so these would have parking. It would be a single family orientation. Question related to that further down was that will there be parking on Doris Avenue? No, there would not be parking on Doris Avenue as an arterial roadway or a secondary collector, at least on whatever level, that we would not support nor recommend parking on Doris Avenue. An earlier version of this plan did show houses facing out onto Doris, but we revised that based on community input that we got 5 to 6 years ago. And so this would be similar to the Cabrillo neighborhood, and that would be a walled back side. So the parking that's allowed is on the internal streets. So it would be only on the interior streets of the project in the neighborhoods. When we design a single family neighborhood, we always design them so that there is also street parking on both sides of the street, not skinny lanes like happens sometimes in a condo project. So the parking along those edges would not be an issue in that area. I'm scrolling down. Is there a way to honor the Chumash caretakers? I think when it comes to that, that's going to be something that the city should be certainly open to addressing. We have no preconceived notion of what any naming should be of streets. I think that there are multiple things that could be in play there. So I think completely open to that. It is obviously the Chumash is a great part of our legacy and heritage in Ventura County. Doug Partello, you asked a question about air quality monitoring. I would defer to the EIR and the consultant. Jay, I don't know if you feel like that's been addressed in the question here. So. With that, I'm going to move on then to the ones that I think I can answer, Jay, if that's all right with you. I'll just go on to how many of the units of 990 are slotted for low income? Of that 990, it would be about 148 of that. So it would be 15% of the total number. So in the entire project, that would be 148 units. And of those, the division, at least in phase one, is that 40% are slotted at very low income and 60% are at lower income. So moderate income does not qualify in this category. And again, keep in mind that there's also the payment of the farm worker housing fee. The question there next appears, is it okay to keep going here, Doug or Jay? That works?
Yeah. Yes, Dennis, please feel free. Thank you.
Okay. When can the public see, or where can they see the proposed Mello-Roos origination document? I think staff addressed it correctly, that the CFD will be formed along with the track map documents, that the initial formation documents will be prepared there. I would say that if you look at the development agreement clearly states that the HOA will be responsible for all of that interior landscape and street maintenance. So this will not be loaded onto a CFD or a Mello-Roos. We stand behind the principle that as many things as possible should be maintained by an HOA. It's been stated by several people that we've talked to that they feel like HOAs have more flexibility and more power to quickly move when they have to address issues, and we don't disagree with that, having been on HOA boards for 30 years now. It's great when you can go ahead and deal with a broken sidewalk or a street tree or something like that, and you also maintain your streets within your HOA budgets, and those are mandated to be maintained. There are a couple of things such as park maintenance that quite likely does not make sense for an HOA to maintain a public park. That can be worked out in the final part of the CFD. And then the city should maintain sewer facilities because that is a public facility that should be maintained. So I hope that helps. The two issues that did come up about that are that came up in another question had to do with the firefighter and the police officer. The CFD is designed at this point under the development agreement to have any additional mitigation required for fire and police service to be covered by the CFD. So there is a dollar amount in that, and it does have a rate attached to it, or a dollar amount attached for the initial start. And I'm sure that that would be the inflator. I can't address the inflator here, I'm sorry. Why not adding a lane on Doris Avenue included in the plan? We're completely open to that. We have plenty of room now that we have a class 1 bike path that we could widen it, narrow down the median to a narrower amount. We're open to whatever the city council decides is the best way to treat that. I don't disagree with Miguel F's question about considering a traffic circle at those Cabrillo streets. We haven't done them as a retrofit to public streets very often. We've done a couple in Santa Clarita that have been functional, but we can discuss that with the transportation department in the city and see if that's an improved alternative versus a traffic signal. So that could be discussed. Anonymous attendee asked if Trader Joe's is considering placing a store in the commercial. That is still true. I don't make a big point of that because I can't promise Trader Joe's, and I don't know, for some people it's the best thing that could show up, and for some people it'd be the worst thing that could show up. So it has been discussed. So I can't speak to that because that would be based on probably 4 years from now when the commercial pad was ready to be built. We do have minimal lawn areas because of the drought tolerant state standards and city requirements for planting. So much drought tolerant native landscape is included in this specific plan. Air quality has been discussed in the EIR. It also does talk about the post-construction effects, I'm almost certain. So I think those are addressed as well. And the air quality impacts that are significant and unavoidable are related. I'll defer to the EIR consultant at the public hearing, but at this time, my understanding is they are related to vehicle emissions, which is unavoidable. It's kind of the dichotomy of the state telling us we have to build homes and saying that we have these other kinds of issues. Let me go back up. Sorry, this scrolled up. Improvement plans for Doris between Patterson and Victoria. At this point, the traffic focus was on Doris, was on Teal Club because it connects to downtown. That will also have further development all the way over to Victoria on the airport side of the property. And so the area in that was not included except for intersection widenings at each of the intersections. However, Teal Club Road will be widened, as Jay mentioned, to 2 travel lanes with 2 bike lane shoulders on it. So it would be in that specific plan, it shows all the way to Victoria at build out that it would include that plus a guardrail along with a new V ditch along that side. So there'd be a guardrail near the adjacent ditch. Multifamily units, for sale units definitely would all have 2-car garages, and single family also. I'll pass on comment about this related to the airport piston planes. I hope I responded to your Mello-Roos question. And stages, we would not propose a large amphitheater. You're absolutely correct. And anything that we build here for any kind of small performance space will have to be run past the airport staff and find out if it's consistent. And if it's not, then we have to just go to lower occupancies. We do have places where we do small stages within, and also farmers market gathering places. So we just can't do things specifically like assisted living and non-ambulatory populations here. And traffic, talking about traffic, it's addressed in the EIR. And this later question about spaces for single family, all the for sale units, even multifamily ones, will have 2-car garages plus meet the parking requirement on site, and we'll have on-street parking within the community and the neighborhood. HOAs can enforce parking. You have to write it into your bylaws from day one to make sure it's done correctly. And the sewer, I believe that can be addressed by staff in the public hearing. And I'd leave it to staff to address the Little Farm Road homes and the rest with traffic related. And again, back to the question about Cabrillo neighborhood, I believe we will have more than adequate parking internally to do this. So I think that is, I'm scrolling down. The apartment parking standard would be per code, and so I can't address that offhand right now. Will I answer all the aircraft noise complaints for the residents? That's a good one. I do hear where I live in Village at the Park. I not only have Camarillo Airport jets coming in at far greater frequency than you have, and also Point Mugu jets coming in on a every couple of hour basis, and so we do hear about them, and so do the airports. We understand. With that. Yeah.
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for addressing all of this stuff. I don't want to hold you up here.
No, that's fine.
You're
I
welcome
just wanted to
add
do what I
more.
could here and let you
I
guys
would,
do the rest.
yeah, I would ask you to, if you can, comment on the housing product types and densities a little more in detail. I
Sure.
know that the specific plan does include development standards as well as different architectural styles.
Right.
And that may be helpful to the group here this evening.
Right.
But regarding in particular, I know we spoke about parking
Mhm.
and zoning code requirements, but I do want to point out that, again, the future development, again, development is not proposed now.
Right.
It would be in the future. That development would be subject to the development standards in the
Correct.
specific plan, as well as the zoning code as well.
Correct. Correct. They are. Yeah.
And with that, you're welcome to add regarding the specific plan details. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I think that's well put. The design standards, everyone can look at those. They are intended to make sure the quality of design is there and that private open space exists in the units. But additionally, on maximum densities, if you look at the specific plan on page 26, it's not a high enough resolution one to put on the screen here, but that imagery that we had up, and it is in the specific plan, it shows that in PA1 and PA2, we anticipate building at about 8 units per acre. So that's to give you a sense, the Cabrillo neighborhood would be at about 5 units per acre, just to the north of us. And so this is slightly higher than that, but all still detached single family homes. That's PA1 and 2 that are the closest to them. PA3 and 4 maximize out at 18 units per acre. We're planning at about 15 to 16. And those densities typically translate to 2 and 3 story townhomes and 2 and 3 story duplexes. So right now the proposal has more duplexes than it does townhomes, because we find duplexes give a better quality of life for people at a price point similar to a townhome, a row town, but you get a little more private yard space and more privacy than having 2 common walls. So that's the bulk of those sites, and only the apartments are at what the city calls medium high, which is up to 30 units per acre. Staff could probably tell you more readily than I can, but I'm pretty sure that the wagon wheel densities are far north of 30 units per acre on a majority of their buildings. And I'm certain that what's being built across the freeway at River Park near the hotel sites that's under construction is probably on the order of 50 or more per acre. That would be my guess. That would be my guesstimate as a planner. And we just don't see any logical reason, airport or no airport, to do densities like that in this area. So for the most part, the densities would be very similar to what you see at Springville. If you went to Springville, because I've been involved in that project, it's the one that's most common that I could refer you to, Springville in Camarillo, just north of the airport. So I think that hopefully that gives a little overview, Jay, for that component.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Jay. And just there's the question regarding the multifamily parking standards, and I did want to just circle back to those. So those do require one space for all one bedrooms and studios, as well as two spaces for two or more bedrooms, as well as visitor parking based on a ratio of one unit for the first 30, or one parking space or one visitor parking space for the first 30 units, and then half a space for every unit thereafter. So that is the specific multifamily parking standards. But as previously mentioned, all the single family would be required to provide a two-car garage. I believe.
And that actually exceeds that new standard, or that standard that you've adopted exceeds what many cities have now. So you have a higher requirement for guest parking for apartments now than some projects. I guess I should point out too that when you're doing a townhome project like this, or a duplex project, when they have small backyards, they're going to not be the size that you could conceivably even do an ADU. There wouldn't be room for an ADU, within most of those. And so with the requirement for the two-car garage, those are not going to be converted garages either. So, in a master planned community with CC&Rs.
Thank you, Dennis. And one other question I saw is in regards to Campus Park. I just want to note that the Campus Park project was ultimately approved, and there was a kind of reduced intensity, but it did go before the Oxnard Airport Authority, and I did approve that project, or recommend it for approval, and then it was approved by the city. And as previously mentioned, this project did also go before the Oxnard Airport Authority, as well as the Airport Land Use Commission, both of which did approve the project or find it to be consistent with the airport land use plan.
Right.
So we're just going through the questions and notes that we've seen here, make sure that we're responding back to them. I'm gonna scroll through the chat and see if there's any additional questions.
Just an update for everyone. We're going to scroll through the questions here. It's kind of hard to read on the screen, so just give us a few minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So also wanted to see if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask any additional questions. We're still going through the ones in the comments, but as we're kind of doing that, I want to see if anybody here wants to raise their hand and provide any additional questions. We are checking to see if these can be that these comments can be recorded, and then if so, we will be providing these with the report to the council. So it looks like we have one. We saw a hand go up, but it looks like it was lowered. There you are. Yeah. So we're gonna allow people to ask questions. Please keep your questions to no more than 3 minutes. Thank you. I think we have Lawrence. Can you hear us? I think we have Lawrence Stein. You had your hand raised, you've been unmuted, so if you would like to make any comments or ask any questions, please speak now. If you're speaking, unfortunately, we can't hear you at this time. So unfortunately, we can't seem to hear you speaking right now. There may be, maybe if you try rejoining. If there's anybody else that would also like to raise their hand. Unfortunately, it looks like we're not able to hear you, Lawrence Stein. We did receive some comments or questions from you before the meeting, and I believe those were the ones that we did respond to. So hopefully that was enough to answer your question. Again, if there's any additional questions following this meeting, you can send those over to us. You can send that to the planning@oxnard.org email. And then we can take those questions or comments and we'll be presenting those to the city council.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I do appreciate it.
Hey, Dennis, this is Jay.
Yes.
Thank you for all the information you provided this evening. I do want to thank everyone for all the questions and comments that were submitted. And I'd like to remind everyone that
So I just wanted to, sorry, Jay, just to jump in. We did see a couple of comments regarding being unable to chat. The question and answer function is what we're using for this meeting in order to take questions and provide those responses. So we are seeing all the questions that are being provided. And so that is how we're tracking the questions and things that are coming in. So the chat function is not part of this meeting. It is just the question and answer format for this webinar.
all right, Joe, thanks for those updates. I do want to point out that this project will be presented to City Council on Tuesday, April 15th, and those hearing documents will be available 12 days prior. So that's within the coming weeks. That agenda will be posted. Please be on the lookout for that. And as we mentioned earlier, you're always welcome to submit comments. All of the comments that are submitted, they will be presented to the decision maker. In that case, it's City Council. So we look forward to any additional comments during that public hearing. Thank you.
It looks like Chuck Carter, you raised your hand. So if you've been allowed to unmute, if you unmute yourself. I see you lowered your hand, so maybe if you don't have any questions at this time. It does appear there's a few more questions regarding CFD and the police and fire services. I did want to note that the development agreement that is being proposed as part of this project is included with the planning commission packet, as well as it will be included in the city council packet. And that does lay out the obligations of both the HOA as well as the CFD. So for further details on those obligations, I would recommend that you look at the development agreement, again, as that lays out a lot of that information. Right. So it doesn't appear there's any additional questions in the chat. So again, thank you all for participating in this webinar. Again, looks like there's a question regarding how to unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself with the microphone icon. Yes, if you raise your hand, then we can send you a prompt to unmute if you are looking to make a comment. So there should be a raise hand feature or function at the bottom of the screen, and you can use that.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, well, a follow-up question, the first was asked about, summarizing the defined improvement plans for Doris between Patterson and Victoria. I understand they're well defined by the project, but in the future, I'm trying to figure out how they'll ever be widened in that area there when you've got that farmland on both sides, which I believe is in SOAR. So that's like the first question again is, what are the defined improvement plans? And the second one is, if there isn't anything in the pipeline or defined, just a generality that, people as they come in will pay their share, but we really don't know when it'll be built. Does that mean that Patterson and Doris is going to be backed up at times until that road is improved and we get all the additional traffic from the school in this project?
I can address what I can address is Teal Club Road. You'll see in the specific plan that Teal Club Road is shown to be widened, and it falls below the threshold because of the amount of widening being done. That and the Patterson widening fall below the County of Ventura threshold for loss of farmland. So that's where the widening is proposed to occur, is both a small amount to Patterson to keep the alignment the same with Patterson as it goes to the north. But the Teal Club Road is the one that is proposed to have the relocated drainage ditch and guardrail put in. And in addition, there'll be undergrounded storm drains. So the only ditch runoff that will occur will be the localized farm runoff, but not the regional runoff, because there will be storm drain constructed all the way from the project to Victoria to connect into the Victoria drain box. So I hope that addresses some of that. So Teal Club is the one that's being upgraded both for safety with the guardrail and by adding a additional pavement to the width that's there already.
Okay, it'll still be, well, that's good to know. Thank you. And that'll help. So Teal Club will still be one lane in each direction, but it
Correct.
will be wider, which is an improvement.
Correct.
And right now, going back to Doris, you know, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, where's the mechanism to pay for widening a Doris, because isn't that all in SOAR area? And so you're not, if that's the case, the chances of getting development on either side are pretty small. In which case, who's coming along to help pay for it, any widening at some point? So what we'll have then is we'll continue to have the one lane in each direction. And as a local resident, you know, the traffic can get backed up there at times, you know, at the peak hours. But now we're going to throw in traffic from this project and the schools. And it's really going to get bad because already we have, like, when the Oxnard High kids get out, they're coming, a lot of people now are using, they're taking Patterson to Doris. So that intersection can get pretty bad then. So now we're going to throw in some more schools. Hopefully they're not at the exact same hours on the peak stuff. So, you know, I'm just trying to get clear, you know,
Right.
just trying to get a better idea when, you know, I understand there might be some short-term, there's always short-term traffic impacts, but when will there be a long-term solution with what's going on with Doris?
Yeah, I would have
Doris Avenue.
yeah, I'd have to leave that part to the city to address, but I'm pretty sure that the intersection components at Victoria and Doris get some improvements. So in other words, typically, typically the roadway itself isn't the choke point, it's the intersection movements. So I believe there are intersection improvements on both ends of that, even on Doris between Patterson and Victoria. So I'd leave it to the city staff to address whatever the long-term issue may be there and how that might be addressed.
All right, thank you. So
Thank you,
you're saying
Dennis.
part of the help will be improving the intersections. Okay.
Yeah, that does help. I mean, it's kind of the logical thing that the backup happens when there's not a free movement of a right turn and a left turn when you get to somewhere, and one guy wants to turn left, so nobody can turn right. I mean, that's kind of a real layman's version of it, but having lived with that in Ventura County over everywhere we go along Fifth Street and everywhere else between Camarillo and Oxnard, we've all experienced that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dennis. So we're at the end of the webinar. If there's maybe one more question, we can take that before we wrap up here. Doesn't appear there's any additional. So with that, again, just want to thank everyone for participating today. Again, if we receive any additional questions and comments, we will make sure to try to include that in the packet to the City Council. This meeting will also be recorded and will be posted online for viewing. So anybody who would like to watch the meeting will be able to view the meeting for additional information before the City Council meeting. As was previously mentioned, the Teal Club item is tentatively scheduled to go to City Council on April 15th. So if you guys would like to, again, submit comments, you can still provide those comments to either planning@oxnard.org or to the city clerk for those additional questions. And with that, again, just want to thank everyone for their time, and you can go ahead and close out the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.